Hello, my friends, and welcome to Child Life on Call. My name is Katie Taylor. I am a certified child life specialist, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Today, we are talking about one of the most common surgeries that I have seen in my career as a child life specialist, and that is an appendectomy. And throughout this conversation, we are talking with a mom, her name is Aspen, about her child's journey into having a ruptured appendix and what that experience was like for her and what she wished she would have known before walking into the experience. Now, I wanted to do a little background in this, and according to a recent study from the Global Burden of Disease, which was done in 2019, they found that across the world, the number of people getting appendicitis has gone up over the years. So in 2019, for about every 100,000 people, about 230 were found to have appendicitis. And this is an increase over 20% from 1990 when the previous study was done, which means appendicitis is becoming more common globally. But because it's common does not mean that it is still not a very scary and real medical emergency for families. So I'm so thrilled to be able to talk with Aspen so she can help other families know what to expect, feel less isolated by some of the feelings and experiences that they may have. And one of the more surprising things I learned about even a child-friendly tactic having to do with bandages that can end up not being right for every single child. So stay tuned for our conversation. I can't wait to share it with you. And just a little heads up before we dive into the stories and information we share here, they are for educational and supportive purposes only. They're not to be taken as medical advice, and if you have concerns about your health or your child's health, it's always best to consult with a healthcare professional who knows your unique situation. Thanks for tuning in, and now let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. I'm excited for this episode for so many reasons. One is your beautiful face makes me so happy. Number two, we haven't had an appendix on the podcast before. However, as child life specialists, this is like the number one or two things I've seen all of the time.
Yep.
Number three, we are working with a hospital to do a quality improvement project, and we'll be looking at ruptured appendixes and their discharge date and child life intervention. So I'm actually very interested in the geeky way. Yeah. But give us a highlight of who you are, introduce yourself to our audience, and tell us a little bit about you, Aspen.
Okay, so I am Aspen. I have two children. I have Willa, who is 6, who we're going to be talking about today, and then a little boy, Miles, who is 4. Normal, typical run-of-the-mill family of 4, live in Dripping Springs, and I work full-time and have 2 crazy kids, and that's it.
So crazy. And so gosh, take us back to when something was going on with Willa, and because you guys had a heck of a story getting into this whole ruptured appendix thing.
Oh, I've got it like ingrained in my brain. Okay. So it was Wednesday, January 3rd.
Wow.
And, she was like, I went to pick her up from her daycare place, and because it was still winter break, and I walked in and she was like, usually she's like, I don't want to leave. I want to keep playing. And I walked in and she was like, I want to go home. And I was like, she's getting sick. I know it right now.
Yeah.
So typical fever, whatever, for 2 days. So that was Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday, she was her normal self again, eating again, like had energy, requesting food. And then the next day, Saturday, she tanked, like went downhill so fast. And it was completely different symptoms. We'll back it up. That earlier that week, I was like, this is either the flu or COVID. This is one of those things. We're not going to do anything about it. We're going to let it run its course. And then that's what I thought had happened. Yeah. Saturday, when she was vomiting, which she hadn't had done, her fever was gone, but she was so lethargic. Like now I know what medical professionals mean when they say, is your child lethargic? Like it is like she would not walk. She asked to be carried to the potty. Like it was something I'd never experienced.
Yeah.
And something in me was like, it's her appendix. It is her appendix. So she kept saying her tummy hurt. But with a 5-year-old, she was about to be 6, saying your tummy hurts can mean anything. It means you want to throw up. It means it hurts, like it's painful. Like accessing what that actually means is not easy for such a young kid. So I told my husband, I was like, I think we need to go to the ER. Like, this is not right. So we went to the ER and I mean, she was like limp doll, and they did a flu test on her and she had the flu, but I think it was still in her system. She didn't have the flu, if you will. Like it was just picking up from the days prior.
Right.
And I was like, but I kept telling her, I was like, these are not consistent symptoms with when she had the flu earlier this week. These are new. So they had her pee in a cup or a hat on the potty. And they were like, we think it's a UTI. And I was like, I guess that makes sense. Like her saying her tummy hurts, but she doesn't say it hurts when she goes to the bathroom. And so they sent us home with some antibiotics. And the next day she was even worse. And I mean, not even waking up and not going potty, anything. And I was like, we have to go back to we have to go back. This is not right. My mom gut was like, it's her appendix. Yeah. So we went back, and when we arrived at the hospital again, and when I say hospital, it's a freestanding ER out here. It's not an actual hospital. Right. And they were like, yeah, we have it in our notes if she comes back to do a scan for her appendix. And I was like, I told you guys this yesterday.
So you mentioned appendix and because you could explain the symptoms away with UTI, with flu, and you and I were even texting at that point. And you're like, and I was like, okay, yeah, you do sometimes vomit with a UTI.
Yeah. And they pressed on her belly and made her jump, which is a test. And she did both of those fine. But I wish I would have pressed harder to say, let's just do a scan. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like,
you're also weighing like radiation, like, and money. Like, it is a whole balance of, okay, I'm going to trust what they tell me.
Yes. Yes, I know it is. Like, I don't want to seem like the crazy mom. Yeah. So they did those tests and they were like, we think it's her UTI. And I was like, okay. But then the next day when we went back, they immediately put her through to get her CT scan. And I don't know if anyone listening, I mean, sure, people listening to this, they know, like, if an ER they send the scan to the children's hospital. And usually it takes 45 minutes to an hour for them to get a response. Well, Dell Children's was on the phone in 10 minutes. And they were like, her appendix is rupturing. She needs to get an ambulance right now. Like, she needs emergency surgery. And then we took an ambulance to the children's hospital.
Okay. You're sounding so calm while you're saying all of this, but I know you didn't feel that way. What was when you wrote to me, you were telling me that time waiting for the ambulance felt both forever.
Yes.
And also like, holy crap, this is happening fast.
Yeah. So it was about 40. I've learned so much in this whole process.
Yeah.
If you're at those freestanding ERs, you don't get the ambulance unless you're having an active heart attack. You don't get the ambulance. That is the county ambulance. They call the private company. Okay. And it was about a 45-minute wait, which seemed like forever, when they're basically telling you your child is unstable and we need emergency surgery and we can't do it here. That felt like forever. And also all this is going on. We dropped off my son with my brother and sister-in-law down the street. And I literally just put boxes of food into a backpack. It was like, here you go. So in this window, my husband's leaving to go get supplies for my son so he can stay, because we knew at that point we weren't going home. Yeah. So from the time we got the diagnosis to the time I met the surgeon is when I was most nervous. I met the surgeon and all the fear and anxiety just kind of left my body because I felt so comforted by him.
Oh.
He was great.
What did he say to make you feel comforted? Or was it his presence, or what was it?
It was his demeanor. He was calm. He spoke to me in terms that were medical, but also to where I could understand. He explained exactly what would happen. He told me he's already done one of these today. He's like, I don't remember the exact number, but basically like a lot a month, whether it's a dozen, like it's like you were just saying earlier, like it is what you see the most often. And so once I met him and he kind of explained everything to me, that's when I was like, okay, she's going to be fine. I trust. Because once you meet the person who's going to open up your child, how they make you feel really matters.
That is so true.
Yeah. So
and you're putting all of your trust into this person.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, not only is he going to open her up but is he going to do a good job?
Yeah. What do you know about like it being ruptured versus not being ruptured when it happened? Like, Did you learn a lot of that in that moment? Or what was what was making you the most comfortable or uncomfortable? What were you focusing on then?
Before she was wheeled back, I think what I was focusing on is there's also different words that different people use. And I learned that they all mean the same thing. Like at the freestanding ER, they kept using the word perforated. Well, I didn't realize that. I thought perforated meant like it's starting just a little bit, but like it's not fully ruptured. But then I learned that once they were in there, they're like, oh no, that means it's ruptured. Like it is actively leaking into her body. That's what that means. And so I didn't understand rupturing, perforating meant those were the same thing. And also I didn't realize until after the fact, the next day, that if you have appendicitis versus a ruptured appendix, your healing time is different and much longer. I was like, why didn't anybody tell me that? Because that is why I would have pushed for a scan the first day we were in there.
Right. Yes. The post-op for like the recovery for just a standard appendectomy. Like I've seen kids sometimes go home that day at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that was not your story.
No. So, had
she ever had surgery before? Did you ever have to say goodbye to her before?
No. And we've never even gone to the urgent care with our children. We're just not those people. We're like, it's fine. Like, luckily we've never had to. And that was another thing that comforted me was meeting the anesthesiologist, because I knew that person has a lot of control in the operating room. Yeah. And meeting them also, because it was a team, two of them, the assistant and then the anesthesiologist, that also was comforting. Yeah. But it was one of those things where I was like, this is happening. I have to be okay with this or I'm going to just torture myself. Right. But I can tell you, I asked, how long is the surgery? And they said 50 minutes to an hour. And Katie, when it got to be an hour and 7 minutes, I was like pacing up and down.
Yeah. I know, they never learn. So one of the things I would always tell families is like actual operating time in the operating room does not equal the amount of time that you'll be away, right? They have to go in there. They have to get her on the proper bed. They have to get everything ready. And then maybe their operating time is 50 minutes to an hour. But then there's the getting off and waiting for the anesthesia. Like there's so much that goes into it. So add on at least a half hour to whatever they tell you.
Yes. And, I don't know typically if a child life specialist in our situation comes to talk to the parents before or during, but we were also there at Sunday night and her surgery started at 11 p.m. So they're going to be at home. So it wasn't I'm not sure if we would have had contact with someone from that team if it would have been Monday at 2 p.m.
Sure. Right.
But yeah, once I said goodbye to her, but then the way the hospital is set up, we were in a tiny little room and then there was a hallway, and then the operating room was on the other side. Yeah. And then they wheeled her back through windows, and I could see her when she was out. And I was like, okay, she's out. Like,
good.
But she has like the mask on. And it's just like, that's your baby. And I know they're okay, but they're not okay.
I know.
Like, and then they finally let us go see her in post-op. And that was once I saw her, it was another like 45 minutes, like wheel by. It was another 45 minutes before I could go like see her.
Right.
And the surgeon did her bandages to have, and this is another part of the story I want to touch on later.
Yeah.
He did bandages of a unicorn and a flamingo and a heart, like on her incision points, which I thought was really thoughtful.
It's so sweet. It's those tiny little touches that make you remember that the surgeon knows he's taking care of a kid.
Yes. Like, he was wonderful. He really was.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's also like, I don't know. It's the human aspect of like the fun part of recognizing these are children. Yeah. This is someone's daughter.
Yes.
And it gives you a sense of like, you go back to see her, like you don't know what you're walking into, and you didn't expect to walk into a flamingo and a unicorn.
No, I didn't. And he did it to match the unicorn on her nightgown that she was wearing when she came in. Like, just really thoughtful, which
also incredibly talented. Call us. Like,
I tried my best. I was like, you did great. It was really, really sweet.
So, and also just from I know you, because we were texting, like Willa was so sick. There was almost no preparing her.
There was
like minute by minute of what she absolutely needed to know.
So I remember whenever I was in the ER, the freestanding ER, and they were like, it's her appendix. I texted you and I was like, tell me what I need to know. Like, I'm going to Google, but I don't want to Google.
Right.
And this is another, like, you've helped us before with her allergies, like her allergy shots and everything. Like, you know her and you know that she's not okay with needles. Mm-hmm. And when we were at the freestanding ER and they went in to put a needle in her arm for the IV because they started antibiotics, she literally looked at her arm and was like, no. And like, that's how bad she felt.
Right.
And whenever they wheeled her away to go back there, I was like, I'm here. I'm not leaving. I will be right here. Nothing on her face. She just felt absolutely terrible.
Poor baby.
Yeah. It was really sad.
So, oh my God, you're exhausted. It's the middle of the night.
Yeah. So we got back to our room around 1 a.m. We got to our room around 1 a.m. and passed out. And the next day is really when it all set in. Like, the road of recovery, like they said it could be anywhere from 2 days to 8. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is.
Especially when you have another kid that you're trying to account for. So the next day, she woke up, and that's when it set in just how bad she felt from the surgery. And apparently, I guess if you have a ruptured appendix, it does a lot of things to your insides and it passes out. Like, she had diarrhea unlike anything I've ever seen. It was like she would get up and it was like water. And I was not prepared for that. I don't think, and I guess, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if it changes from person to person or if that's just standard, but I was not expecting to be a nurse in that moment too, which is fine.
Right.
Because I'm her mom and I want to be there.
Right.
But I was not prepared with the amount of changing sheets and wiping up poop from everywhere. And like, she literally, like, they're like, get her to walk. And because that's what she needs after surgery. And every time she stood up, it would just come out of her. And this is one thing where the nurses kept asking, and I wish I would have said, can you just write it on the board to stop asking me this? Right. They kept asking for her to wear a diaper, and she's about to be 6. Yeah. She was like, I'm not wearing a diaper. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't want her to, because then she would just be sitting in it.
Right.
And with a girl, that's really hard because it'll cause a infection or,
Well, she already has a UTI.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, you've already made the decision. Let's move forward with how you're going to handle it.
And I know they were trying to be helpful, but it just, I was like, this isn't happening.
Yeah. You're allowed to have opinions. Like, a diaper isn't medically necessary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I will get on my hands and knees and clean up. As her mother, yes, I did. I've done that with her whole like first few years of life. I'll do it again.
Yeah. Oh, sweet girl.
Yeah.
Was the amount of like diarrhea phasing the nurses at all? Or did they say, oh, we see this? Or what did they say?
Katie, that's a good question. It's hard to tell because they weren't really coming in to help. They kind of came in and like handed me stuff and left.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I have help? I'm here alone. Like, can someone just help me like change her sheets? Like, because I can't help her and change sheets and all the things. Like,
it's the role. Whose role is what? I remember feeling that when, I guess Wesley was born, my first son, my only son. And you know how they're like so obsessed with you telling them when they poop for the first time?
Yes.
Like,
yes. Yeah.
So like he pooped and I like called the nurse on the thing and I was like, hey, he pooped. They're like, okay. And I was like, so are you going to come? And they're like, do you need help? And I was like, no, I just wasn't sure on whose role was what. And when you're a mom in the hospital with your child, you're fine with taking on certain roles, but you just want to be told this is the expectation.
Yes, that is so true. Like, whose job is what? Yeah. Like that would have been really great. And yes, you're right. The charting of the poop and the pee, like they were very adamant about that. And
that's your job, right? Like you basically charted it all.
Yes, I did it all, which was fine. Like, I'm happy to do it. Like, give me a job, but just don't give me a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was day one for the most part.
That was day one. And then that's also when our child life specialist came and introduced herself. And it's so funny. Like, Willa was basically just laying on the bed, like not really functioning at all. But now after the fact, she talks about that child life specialist a lot. And she's like, and I know just from being close friends with you that play is super important with a child that is healing. And Willa going to that playroom in the wheelchair, and she would literally, I'll send you pictures. Like, she literally there's a fake ambulance that's like pretty large. It's probably like 5 feet tall. And Willa would ask to point her wheelchair towards the ambulance so she could push the button with her toe. Like, she, like she wanted to be a kid, but she's also, And they had Barbie houses and she just played with the Barbies as much as she possibly could. But every day was a little bit more. And one of the most, like, to this day that she talks about, one of the most impactful things that Child Life helped us do was the art at the hospital. Like, that was when I saw her in the art class. I saw her be herself for the first time in like almost a week and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. It's, when your kids feel so sick, and whether that's from a ruptured appendix or chemotherapy or a new diagnosis or they're lethargic, one of the best interventions we say is even just playing next to your child. You play for them. And like literally just watching someone else play can feel good if you don't have the energy to do it. But that's like essentially what you guys were doing by even taking her to the playroom.
Yeah. And we did that. I didn't realize that's what we were doing till after. And like, now that you say, that's what the child life specialist did. Like,
she was playing next to her.
Yeah. She was playing next to her. And like, she would ask Willa questions like, should I do this with the doll? You know, like with the Barbie doll, like, and trying to make Willa like give her direction with the doll. So that way Willa, I think, probably had control over the situation somewhat. But yeah, that's exactly what she did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't, I know, all easy in terms of, there's a lot of things I want to talk with you about. So she's recovering on the way to healing, and with feeling better comes like your spunky child coming back, right?
Yes. Yes. That's how I knew she was starting to feel better. Because she's like, get that out of my face. Like, when those nurses would come in to switch out her IV, oh, she was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're like, you're feeling better.
Yes. Yes. But still refusing to eat food. And that was one of our biggest hurdles to leave the hospital.
What do you think it was?
So
What do you think could have helped? What wasn't good? Like, give us the details.
I think that she has a hard time with food regardless. And then you add the pressure on of you have to eat, you have to eat, you have to eat. And most people are going to shut down. But then I think what one of the kickers was, the environment, it's not a happy environment in your hospital room. I mean, we were surrounded by toys, and she doesn't, like, she cares about them because she wants them, but she's also like, I don't feel good. At this point, she hadn't eaten in 7 days.
Yeah.
And so I knew once day 6, I kept telling the doctors, I was like, we have to go home. Like, I know as soon as we get home, she's going to want to eat. Yeah. And they were like, she has to eat something. We have to make sure she can keep it down. So on day 7, we had this bag of toys from Target. I was like, you can have anything you want from here if you just take 3 bites of this cookie. And she took 3 small bites. I was like, she did it. She did it. On the phone. I was like, she did it. And they were like, okay, great. And then as soon as we got home, she was like, can I have cornbread? Can I have this? And I was like, I just knew as my mom gut, I was like, she just has to get out of there.
Yeah. I have so many schools of thought about, like, number one, when you were leaving, you're like, our room looks like a Toys R Us.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so true. Kids will reach a point where there's no incentive that will help them. Well, clearly you found the Target bag. You did the thing. You did hard work. Yeah. But, like, dropping off toys and more presents, like, it doesn't equate to always getting the result that you want.
No, it doesn't.
And it has to be like her internal motivation being like, all right.
Yeah. I was like, do you want to go home? And she was like, yes. And I was like, we have to do this. And you can have 3 toys from the Target bag.
Yeah. Well, and, like, she's probably terrified of getting sick again, having diarrhea, throwing up, her belly hurting. Like, all of it is going on into the addition of, like, food just being challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, bringing up her belly, I mentioned this earlier that I wanted to touch on the unicorn and everything, Yeah. So it actually became something she hated because there's 2 things I want to talk about here. So the first is that when you're 5, almost 6, you don't show people your vagina, and people don't look at it. That's just not, even though she knows she's at the doctor and that's something that happens at the doctor, it's a hard thing for a 5 or 6-year-old to wrap their head around. So when people kept coming in and lifting up her gown, she would start screaming because I think a combination of things, that's a private area to her.
You don't have underwear on.
You don't have underwear on. And they would use we just want to see the unicorn. She's like, F this unicorn.
Right.
Like, I don't want the unicorn on me anymore. Like, if that's what people are coming in here and wanting to see, I don't know. Please stop looking at it.
Right. Oh, that's so true, Aspen.
That was hard. Like,
that was hard.
It was, and it's, I can sit there all day till I'm blue in the face telling her we have to do this. Like, this is how we're going to have to take care of your body. And I know that you don't want to do this, and that's okay. You don't have to want to do this, but they have to see your tummy. But it's not just her tummy they're seeing everything below it too.
Right.
That was difficult.
Yeah. I never even thought of that and it's right. Clinicians are trying to be harmless, making it, oh, we just want to see the unicorn. Like, we're not looking at you, but that's not the truth. Like,
Yeah.
they don't just want to see the unicorn. They want to see if it's bloody. They want to see how it's healing. And yeah, it makes you, it's my truth mug here I'm holding. Kids deserve
Yeah.
to know the truth in a way they can understand it.
Yeah.
And just looking at the unicorn, she's like, I'm on to you people.
Yeah.
Like,
She's like, I'm not an idiot.
yeah.
Yeah. And, she was from the get-go, and before she was even diagnosed, she was very guarded about the area because it was so painful. So it went from having a ruptured appendix painful to like, I want to cover this and hold it because it hurts, to now I have incisions that don't feel good and I want to protect those. It's just a form of natural protection for your body.
For sure. And I mean, I love that our kids are feeling that about themselves, right? That it belongs to them and they get to decide who sees what. But that does get stripped away when you go into the hospital.
It really does. And like, I couldn't explain it to her enough to where she would grasp it and be okay with it. She's just not going to be okay with it. And I had
decided.
The hardest part, Katie, of all of it was I had to be okay with her not being okay with it. Like, that was probably one of the most besides the exhaustion.
Yeah.
Making myself okay with her not being okay with something was hard.
When you did that, what changed for you?
I guess just grin and bear it and get through it.
Yeah.
Like,
grin. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, it's her life. It wasn't like we have to do this because we're going to do this. Like, we're going to a place that you don't want to go to. No, this is, you could have died if we let this keep going and you didn't get diagnosed. Like, and now we're in the hospital. Like, right. Those are two different things. Like, it's kind of like I heard a great mom say, she was like, I give my kids like the option to do stuff until it comes to hygiene.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you have to wash your hair.
Yeah. it's part of the process.
Yes. Yeah.
We've talked about some of the things that weren't great, that didn't work. What did you see work well for her while you were there? And actually, I want to talk about you a little bit. Like, what was helpful for you?
Helpful for me, and I understand I feel like I'm a rarity in this. A lot of people parents shut down when their kid is in the hospital. They don't want people coming. They don't want any of that. I needed that. Yeah. And I texted with people a lot. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I was giving people daily updates. Like, also because it felt like I had a lifeline out to the people that I know cared. And I mean, I wanted people there in a way that was helpful, but also safe for Willa. I didn't want just anybody and everybody coming by, but like my family would come and my best friend would come and she would just sit there. And like, that was helpful. And like, Willa knows them as like her aunts, you know what I mean?
Right.
That was really helpful. Just people sitting there and also people helping my son. I mean, I felt incredibly lucky with the community that we had. I mean, people took Miles out to dinner and just stayed with him.
It's like you knew you had that community, but now you really know you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was this one nurse, her name was Taylor, and like, she lives in my heart. Like, she connected with me as Willa's mom and not just mom of patient whatever. Yeah. And I know that we're lucky. I will just say this. I know that we're lucky where we had an episode that was easily solvable and common. Like, I know there's a lot of people who are not that lucky. But even with the easy things, we're in the hospital for a week, you are exhausted. And I didn't want to break down in front of Willa. I broke down in the hallway and she just stood there hugging me and letting me cry on her. And I was like, I'm just tired and I just want to I just want her to be okay.
Yeah.
Because there was a point where they thought she was going to need drains because she was throwing up and stuff, and they thought maybe an abscess was forming. And that's when I broke down.
Right. You're like, another thing.
Yes.
The thought of something else.
Yeah.
Making this complex.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself and how you handle hard things through this process?
Oh, that's a good question. I learned that I'm stronger than I think I am, that I can really hold it together when it has something with my kid. Like, I didn't cry until the first night, not the night we went into the room, but the second night. So like the first full night we were there. She was diarrheaing everywhere, and I called my boss crying, and because she lives somewhat nearby, and I was like, these wipes at the hospital are not cutting it, and we have a lot of diarrhea. Will you please bring me water wipes? But like, I could hold it together when Willa needed me, which I up until it happened, like, I didn't know if I could. I thought I would just start crying.
Yeah. And you and I are both proponents of like a good cry.
Like, Katie, I want you to cry.
Like I'm tearing up right now. But no, it's so true. It's like you have a depth inside of you that's resurrected as an advocate and like high alert, and it lives inside of you when you need it. And that's strength.
Yeah. And another thing is that I've got really good gut intuition.
Yeah, you do.
I knew from the get-go, and like it taught me to just listen to myself.
Right.
Like, listen to that voice that's telling you, you need to ask these questions. You need to push harder on this topic.
Yeah. Why do you think we don't as parents in the medical environment? I often equate it to, gosh, we'll be like, this teacher is not a good fit, or this coach is being way too hard on them, or whatever this is. And we're more likely to advocate for that. Why, when we get into healthcare, do we stop?
I think it's truly because oftentimes we put doctors on a pedestal that they know best and they can never be wrong because they're a doctor. And that's just not true. I mean, so we just stop asking questions and we stop pushing. Like, I knew that day when that doctor was telling me it was a UTI, I was like, this is not just a UTI.
Yeah.
Like, but he's a doctor and he has all these degrees.
Yeah.
He paid a lot of money for them.
Right.
He has to be the one that's right, not her mother who birthed her and knows her and is with her every day.
Yeah. Like those delicate details about your child that you know. And that's why I feel like truly the collaboration between this advanced medical degree, physical human, and the insight from parents who know every detail about their child. Like when they work together, nothing, right? So he could have sat down and said, how are you, like, are we on the same page with this?
Right.
Yeah. Like, and not questioning, am I right or am I wrong? Like, what, let me look to you as the medical expert. That's not what it would have said. It would have been, okay, are you okay with this? How are we feeling? Are we on the same page? And who knows, maybe you still would have been like, we're good because you have that trust. And who knows what we would have done, but it could have
that opportunity.
That opportunity.
Yeah. Like, I remember after she did the jump test, he looked at me and was so confident and said, there's no way a child that has appendicitis would do that.
Oh,
and
just don't say that.
She clearly had it at that point, because this was like, I mean, I'm assuming that you have appendicitis for at least 24 hours before it ruptures, right? You don't get appendicitis and 6 hours later it ruptures. Like, it's a time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
there's no way a child with appendicitis would do that.
Yeah. And I'm like, but she did. And another thing that, and this is just, I found this all out after the fact, like after she was diagnosed, her blood was totally normal. Like, totally normal. So like if they would have, which they don't do, but like if they would have just gone off of that, they would have not they would have been like, oh, she's just sick. But that, her blood being normal also led me to the fact she also jumped yesterday and fine. And like they said she didn't have it.
Yeah.
So
it's true though. And then when you went to another hospital, the surgeon and the anesthesiologist, you didn't feel that questioning of your mom gut there. You felt that comfort.
The only time I felt it was when with the food, when they were like, she has to eat here. I was like, just trust me.
Yeah.
I will come back. I'll come back, but just trust me. Like we just have to go home. We have to leave here.
Yeah. Let me send you a picture of her eating.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you are one strong ass woman. And that was a long, long couple of weeks for you all. I mean, you literally went from flu, UTI, ruptured appendix, hospital stay. Oh, guess what? It's time to go back to school.
Yes. Yeah. And like, that's another thing. Going back to school was difficult for her. I don't think so much physically. I think she was fine to go back.
Right.
But she was really nervous about it. I mean, she was screaming and crying at drop off. They had to hold her. And with me screaming, be careful of her stomach, because she hadn't hit that 2-week mark. But she had been through a lot.
Yeah.
And thank God she has the best teacher in the world who literally would text me picture updates all day long for a week.
Yeah.
And like that trust in her teacher of like, I know she's going to be okay. Like,
right.
With Miss Mac, like that was
right. It's that community
and comforting to me.
My goodness. What would you tell like that mom who's knows their child is about to have a surgery, an emergent surgery, really to help save their life? What would you tell that mom?
That's a really good question. And it's hard because I feel like everyone is so different, and what comforts one person doesn't comfort another.
What would comfort you?
I would, and this is so cliche, I'd be like, it's okay to be really scared, because no one told me that.
Yeah.
It's okay to be scared, and it's okay to push for more answers, like on the other side of it. That's what I was not prepared for. Ask all the questions after the surgery for healing. Yeah. That's what I think is like, what does this look like? What does pooping look like? What does drinking look like? And this is another thing, and I'm sure you're going to know this, like they tell you it's different for every kid. Everything. It's like, okay, but what do you see most often?
Sure.
Like that's when, and another thing is like, tell the night nurses, like night nurse shift, I feel like is hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like we had nurses, and this is so small, but like we had nurses who would come in and just turn on all the lights in the middle of the night. Communicate with them like what you want. Right. But in the moment of actual surgery, your kid's about to walk into surgery, I just want to hug them and be like, it's going to be okay. It's scary, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I know you're going to make a difference for so many parents who relate to maybe not this story specifically, but that fear and the grit and bear it to get through it, and the strength that you have to pull from that you didn't know you had, but you didn't have a choice. You had to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that was really helpful for me was not only telling Willa, this is like the stuff that makes me cry.
Yeah.
Not just telling her that she's brave, but telling yourself.
Yeah.
Like, because you have to be brave as the parent too.
Yeah. There's so much importance to caring for the parents and the grandparents and the caregivers, whoever it is, with the child, because you're being okay or being supported is just as important as Willa feeling it too.
Yeah. So maybe that's what I would tell a parent going through. It was like, your child's brave, but so are you.
Yeah.
Like, you're also really strong. Like, I know that you're really focused on telling your child that they're strong, but you are too.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like a therapy session.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would tell them. Like, you're also really brave and you can do this.
Yeah. Because you did it.
Yeah. And like in the moment, I think what would have been helpful for me. Like, you can do this. You're brave. It will be okay.
Yeah. Well, I love you. And I'm so grateful for you coming in, sharing this really hard part of what you guys just went through a few months
ago. Thank you for letting me share her story. Like, I'm really proud of her.
Yeah. I'm really proud of you.
It was a lot. But now we never have to worry about an appendix again with her.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need it anymore. That kids ask that, like, do I need this? No, you don't.
No. And I know we're wrapping up, but that was another thing that the child life specialist did. She brought a book specialized to Willa, and Willa asked for it all the time. And it was Willa's book of why she's in the hospital. And it was like, well, do I need my appendix? And it was like, no, actually you don't need it. And it like had pictures and everything like that. Like,
whoa. It was just something she made for Willa.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. It was really helpful. It was great. She was awesome.
And a little keepsake that you get to keep that hopefully doesn't involve unicorns.
Yes, exactly.
Has she recovered? Is she back on board with like unicorns, or it's still touch and go?
Back on board with unicorns. Just don't ask to. She doesn't like people looking at her incision scars. She's like, don't look at it.
Don't. No bikinis, Mom.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Aspen. Was there anything else that you were hoping to share that you didn't get a chance to?
I guess one thing that I didn't really touch on is that like my husband was also amazing in this whole process.
Shout out.
He like took, we tag teamed like crazy. Like, he would take one night, I would take another night so we could help with my, like, he was, there's no way I would have been able to do it without him.
Oh, Justin, you're loved. And you can come on the podcast too if you want.
He is very loved. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, love.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to Child Life on Call. If you head to our website, childlifeoncall.com, you're going to find all sorts of stuff there for parents, professionals, healthcare providers, child life specialists, no matter who you are. Actually, when you just go to our homepage, it'll help you direct to exactly where you need to go. On that, you'll find opportunities and PDUs for child life specialists, parents. We've got a starter kit for you, and clinicians. We even have a clinician course, which teaches you how to be a confident and capable caregiver in pediatrics. We're so grateful that you're here. Please DM us on Instagram. And like I mentioned, when you rate and review this podcast, it helps other families be able to find us. So let's keep doing that. And I will see you again here next week.